It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, 9 head coaches. Try to do the math on that one. Good luck. It's not very easy. You got to go from team to team very quickly for that to happen. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. As a reminder, all of these shows, the full episode, always on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. The other thing is, that's where we put the highlight clips of these shows. I think you'd really enjoy as well. If you don't want to watch the whole college draft or the whole even money, you should, but sometimes you can just check out the highlight clips either on the YouTube page, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, or on our social media platforms at Ross Tucker Pod. The star of this show is my guy, John Daigle. Love his passion, love his info. Very cool guy, very, very unique, cool guy. Check him out on social media at NotJDaigle. Getting a chance to actually see him in person next week, which will be awesome down in New Orleans at the Super Bowl. He's one of the owners for EstablishTheRun.com, where you can and should get a veritable smorgasbord of information. Just make sure you use that code FEAST so that you get the discount when you do. Again, EstablishTheRun.com. Use the code FEAST. All right. So, John, here's what I'm thinking. We got 2 more episodes before the Super Bowl. We only have 1 game left. It's the Super Bowl. You might have heard of it. I don't know that we've ever done like a super deep dive into prop bets. And so I was thinking we could go maybe the Eagles or either team today, the other team next week, and just kind of go through their prop bets and whether we like it, love it, hate it, and go through one by one and just pick them off. Your thoughts?
It's only fitting that if we were to do that, we start with the Eagles, since you also have a unique and different view than I have coming into this one. So I agree. Everyone loves the prop bets. It's going to be a busy week at DraftKings between that and DFS. So let's just continue our usual order in previewing the game, talking about how both of these teams can win, and then let's dive into their team props individually.
All right, so let's start with that. How do the Eagles win this game?
So, from a top-down standpoint, the Eagles, I feel like, are coming in clicking on all cylinders as the better overall team. What I as the better overall team versus the best overall player. We'll get to that in the other episode when we talk about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense. But for the Eagles, the worry had been Jalen Hurts throughout this postseason, coming back from injury, the concussion, and then also a couple of weeks ago hurting his knee, and then being what we thought would be limited on the ground. Not only that, but for everyone who has listened the past couple of weeks as well, that whenever the Eagles' pocket had been crushed, Jalen Hurts were struggling under pressure. And all these things just seem to take a quick back seat this past week in the conference championship against Washington. Even downfield, Jalen Hurts looked incredible. 4 of 6 on throws 10 yards downfield for over 15 yards per attempt. Remember, the last time these two teams played in the 2022 season, in the Super Bowl, of course, was Steve Spagnuolo, Chiefs defensive coordinator, still struggling to contain Hurts. 4 total touchdowns from scrimmage, including 70-plus rushing yards and double-digit carries. And now that we see the knee injury was clearly a thing of the past, and this is even before he's going to get 2 extra weeks to heal before the Super Bowl, that's the X factor here, is Jalen Hurts, now that the offense, as I talked about earlier, is clearly clicking with multiple elements they can bring to this game to beat Spagnuolo, since they did not have, of course, the major X factor, Saquon Barkley, the last time these two teams played. And unless you have something to talk about your view on Hurts, I do want to get into the Barkley aspect of this as well.
Yeah, so the Hurts thing's going to be really interesting. That's the best he's played in a couple months.
Oh, yeah.
So do you look at it and say, well, that's what he's going to do again? Or was it something to do with the Commanders' defense? And was that an anomaly? The interesting thing about Hurts, I think, John, is he can be susceptible to pressure at times.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where, whether it's him or the O-line, guys come free, and Hurts doesn't seem to see it maybe as quickly as he should to get rid of it or deliver a good pass, and he gets sacked. But then there are also other times where you only rush 3 or 4, and he holds it and holds it and holds it, and then takes a sack. So I got to be honest with you, I don't know which way. I mean, it's always some combination, right? You don't want to do the same thing every time. But I'll be curious. See, Spagnuolo usually tries to solve his problems with aggression, right, with blitzing. But you can go either way. You can say, hey, let's do coverage. He's going to hold on to the ball, and we'll get the sacks that way. Or you can say, let's heat him up, because at times he's not as quick to get rid of the ball against pressure. He did very well against both those, against the Commanders. But I do think that's an interesting strategy that Spagnuolo is going to have to figure out.
Another thing he will have to figure out as we lean into this Barkley conversation is stopping the run. Because all season long, the Chiefs, through their defensive injuries in the last month of the season, sometimes they even struggled to get pressure whenever Chris Jones was not on the field. They had still been a stout run defense the entire year. But now it seems at the worst possible time, the floodgates have opened. And that's why I'm more concerned in this matchup for Kansas City than I was a couple years ago. During the regular season, the Chiefs' run defense, for example, 24th in yards per carry, and just elite fundamentals in tackling and ensuring players could not record yards after contact. Jerome Ford was actually the only running back to rush for 80 yards against them at any point this year. And that's only because he broke loose for a 62-yard in the third quarter whenever the Chiefs played the Browns earlier this season. But they've sprung a leak now in Joe Mixon, 18 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown, really keeping the Texans around until the fourth quarter, even though their offense only scored 12 points in that first divisional round game against Houston. And then last week in the conference championship, James Cook obviously should have got more touches, but when he did get the ball, 13 carries, 85 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. It was not his fault at all. And so now you step back and see that Kansas City has allowed 4.8 yards per carry through 2 postseason games. The issue also, as we talk about Hurts being an X factor here, it's not just happening to running backs either now for Saquon Barkley to succeed. They've allowed Kansas City at least 39 rushing yards to quarterbacks in 4 consecutive games going back to week 17. And as I talked about earlier, when these two teams played the Super Bowl, Hurts already had his way and Spagnuolo struggled to contain him. So as we start mentioning our favorite props, especially for the Eagles side of it, I do want to give everyone a long shot and say, first of all, I do like Hurts' first touchdown of the game at plus 650 on DraftKings because he has this, what I believe can be the legs he's providing that perhaps Spags does not have a way to stop. That's a really good number to attack. Not only that, but his rushing prop also on DraftKings, 37.5 rushing yards, something I also want to be over given the leaks I discussed just now.
Ooh, that stat about going back to week 17 with the quarterbacks is really interesting. I did not realize that. What about when the Eagles look to throw the ball?
And so it's still the same secondary that has limited everyone they've faced, even going back to last week when Khalil Shakir, for as good of a player as he is, to really just hold him to being a possession receiver. And yes, there were a couple of drops that could have swung the game the other way for the Bills, and their passing offense would have looked much better in the end. But only Jerry Jeudy has gone over 100 yards as a receiver against the Chiefs all season long back in week 11. It's a really tough spot for both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and I do think their numbers are fair because of that. So For someone like A.J. Brown, we saw last week, and we talked about this in the conference championship preview, not that anyone's going back and listening, but we said how it's at least volatile for Brown to have success because of how Dan Quinn switches everything up. And we saw there were times where Hurts did not look A.J. Brown's way, but in other times when he was one-on-one, Hurts drops back, looks up, and that's the pass that Hurts delivered, just absolute nails over the top along the left sideline for the big first down conversion. That's also the out route that A.J. Brown had for his touchdown, just a little route to the right side, a one-on-one coverage, and of course, A.J. Brown beat his man. Whenever Hurts sees it's going to be one-on-one, that's where he's going. The thing is, even in the Super Bowl, Spagnuolo switches it up on you enough that it's going to be sporadic. And so, to me, I'm curious if you see anything because it's, again, there's such an airtight and tough secondary. I think that both A.J. Brown's and Devonta Smith's numbers are fair at DraftKings.
Interesting. Yeah. What about Goddard at tight end?
So Goddard is actually my favorite receiving prop for the Eagles. And this is something we went back to last week in that he had, since he had returned from injury, really been a catalyst of the passing game. And now if you look at his last 4 starts since he did come back for the Eagles, 55, 47, 56, and then last week, 85 receiving yards. Last I checked at DraftKings, a 51.5 receiving yard prop, but the Chiefs have also faced the most targets to tight ends this year. That's an area that they have struggled against mightily. So, yes, I think Goddard is not only one of my favorite plays in DFS on DraftKings, but also one of my favorite over receiving props to target.
Love it almost as much as I love Labatt Blue Light. I feel bad for my Bills fans, but we can all drink some Labatt Blue Light, commiserate with them, with our friends, and live life to the power of we. Delicious light beer. My favorite light beer, always has been. Always enjoy responsibly beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Okay, I want to dive into some of these a little bit closer now. I guess I'm always most fascinated by the rushing props, and maybe in particular, the rushing attempts. So here's what DraftKings is showing right now for rushing attempts. The over-under for Saquon Barkley is 22.5. For Kareem Hunt, 11.5. Jalen Hurts, 9.5. Patrick Mahomes, 6.5. Isaiah Pacheco, 6.5. You know, typically, this is where I go to the well, John, with the overs on quarterback rushing attempts like Josh Allen. I think he was 6.5 last week. Give me a break. I mean, he had 6.5 quarterback sneaks, I think. Like, you know, but man, these are higher than I thought they'd be. You know, I don't know if it's been the last couple of days. DraftKings had their prop bets out Sunday night. I'm not sure if it's been bet up or not, but 9.5 for Hurts. I think he's going to run a lot. That's a big number. Mahomes, 6.5. I think he's going to run a lot, but that's still a big number.
And remember, for as much as we love betting props, these numbers are probably the sharpest that DraftKings have had eyes on all year long. And so that's why, even as I talked about A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, I looked at the numbers and thought, okay, these are actually fair, when I thought I'd get a couple of advantageous spots to target. When we get to the Chiefs episode, I do have a couple of some favorite bets I would like to attack, both over and under in their passing game. But for the Eagles, yes, you talk about rushing, and it's a bit tougher just because of the juice numbers. We do have a reason to believe that now we've seen, and again, we're going to talk about this a lot more depth in the Chiefs episode, but we do have a reason to believe that Patrick Mahomes will scramble more, as he's shown us not only in his career throughout the postseason, but this one in particular. Got a couple rushing touchdowns from him this past week as well against the Bills. So I think the Patrick Mahomes over rushing number is probably the better one to attack. Jalen Hurts just seems solid. Like, it would not be shocking if he finished with double-digit carries, especially coming off of 10 carries just last week. But again, 9.5 is a pretty high median to attack and looking at an over. So that's one that I initially jumped to, but I'm instead going to shy away from.
By the way, I'm an idiot. I forgot we were just doing the Eagles this week, and we'll do the Chiefs next week.
I tried to handle it professionally and just segue into it.
No, thank you for that. What about the yards over under? Saquon is at 115.5. Jalen Hurts is at 37.5.
So 37.5 is a number I mentioned just to you earlier, but I do want to emphasize that again, just because, again, I will repeat the stat for everyone. Jack can even clip it off and put it on social media that if you include Russell Wilson and Bo Nix going back to week 17, yes, the Chiefs' last 4 games, at least 39 rushing yards allowed to every quarterback. That includes CJ Stroud's 42 in the divisional round. And then, of course, last week, Josh Allen's 11 carries for 39 yards. So 37.5 for Jalen Hurts. You can also then not have to bet the high 9.5 total. Like, he can just run for a long one and get us there anyways. So I do love that over 37.5 rushing for Jalen Hurts. Barkley's tougher. Of course, the numbers not going to be low. Now, again, the leaks we talked about with Kansas City's rushing defense all of a sudden, maybe that does mean that we can take 110 at minus 120 or the 115 over under at DraftKings. That's probably the way I would lean is over. But again, the number is so high that I'm still skeptical about it.
The only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Join the Tums foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/Tums foodball now through February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/Tums foodball. Don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites featuring a soft and easy to chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. Be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok. All right, the Super Bowl is set. It is the Eagles and the Chiefs. I've been telling you guys about Smirnoff being an official sponsor of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast all year. So you already know that they're also an official vodka partner of the NFL and Super Bowl 59. What I love about Smirnoff is that you can get the world's #1 vodka without breaking the bank. Very important. This feeling is what the good folks over at Smirnoff call Smirnoff Extraordinary. And yes, I can say that way better than the guys in the TV commercial. They've got some awesome items right now dropping, including from Vernon Davis. You got to check it out. Head on over to SmirnoffDrops.com to check out upcoming drops and check out these Smirnoff Extraordinary items. Go quick. They won't last long. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Pricing at sole discretion of the retailer. May vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. For the passing props, man, there's a lot up there. You can look at passing yards over under, passing attempts over under. For Hurts, the attempts is 27.5, and the yards for Hurts is 213.5. Either one of those jump out at you at all?
Under pass attempt seems interesting. I'm curious, do you think the Eagles will play more keep away? It's odd because I can't recall the last offense, maybe the Cowboys when Ezekiel Elliott was at his prime, maybe the Titans whenever they knocked off the Patriots, but I can't recall the last time a explosive offense, when we talk about an offense being an explosive one, that actually it's a running explosive offense, and everything they do through the air, although they clearly have elite talent in AJB and Smith, everything they do through the air is suddenly a compliment to what Hurts and Barkley provide on the ground. Your thoughts on that? Because I don't know if that means the Eagles will then try to play keep away and be efficient, because that's how they also punched Washington in the mouth. Washington, everyone forgets, looked amazing on their first drive. They run double-digit plays. They march down the field. They score a touchdown. And next thing you know, 6 plays later, it doesn't even matter because a power, explosive running offense is so efficient that the Eagles just marched right back down quickly, scored a touchdown, and said, we can play this game too, just with with a lower time of possession.
Yeah, they this becomes like a game script thing, right? I think if the game goes the way the Eagles want it to go, then he would be under the 27 and a half attempts, would be my guess. It'd be more like 17 of 21, maybe 20 of 27, like on the high end. If the game goes how they want it to go. I think they want to run it. I think they do want to play keep away. And I think that's the way they want to play. It might not go that way. And also, they have a long-standing philosophy in that organization to throw, to score, to get the lead, and then run in the second half to win is kind of how they've always done it. I'm very curious to see if that's how they come out in this game. I would lean to the under. I would lean to the under 27 and a half attempts if the game goes the way they want it to go. The yardage number seems pretty high to me, 213 and a half. He hasn't done that very much in a while. I mean, that's a high number. I feel like I would lean to the under on the Hurts passing yards because, I don't know how many times he's hit that in the last couple months.
And again, the secondary, Spagnuolo is a unit for him that just hasn't gotten away at any point, especially with Jalen Watson on the field. Hurts nearly eclipsed 250 yards when they played a couple years ago. But again, this is a running offense, and they're doing well. Like, even if the game plan is to come out and throw to score and build the lead that way, it may not even matter, as we saw against Washington when Saquon Barkley says, well, what about a 60-yard rushing TD instead? I'll take the ball out of your hands myself personally. So, yeah, I agree. I like the under on the attempts. The yards, I have no opinion on, though. You would think it seems low, but again, based on what the Eagles' offense has become, 213 seems about right for Hurts.
It's interesting. Do you ever get into the touchdown score odds, John?
Oh, I forgot to mention, I do have one I like, yes, but curious.
Oh, tell me.
Well, I already talked about Jalen Hurts' first touchdown at plus 650, but an anytime touchdown, which better odds. We have 4 quarters to score, obviously. Last I saw, you can pull it up right now for me, Dallas Goedert. We talked about the tear he's on the last month since he came back from injury. But last I saw, plus 265, plus 285.
295.
295 for Goddard anytime touchdown. That's my favorite anytime touchdown for the Eagles. Again, tight ends have been able to separate against this front seven and linebacker unit. And the fact that Goddard's still getting hammered targets, essentially as the Eagles' second wide receiver behind A.J. Brown throughout the postseason, yes, I love that number.
I kind of like the Jalen Hurts 2+ touchdowns rushing at 550 because to me it's like one of them's a tush push, maybe 2 tush pushes, but certainly he could also have one where he actually runs. That one interests me. I'm surprised that the odds are higher for Barkley than they are for Hurts. I would think Hurts is more likely to have a rushing touchdown in this game than Barkley, but maybe not. I don't know. That surprised me a little bit.
Also, a funny antecedent from this past week as well, just that Cam Jurgens injury. Of course, he has to come back in the second half as Lander Dickerson leaves. But just funny that all the commentary before the game was then, oh, this is going to affect the tush push. And actually, the tush push was stronger than ever, so much so the refs had to basically make up a rule on the spot saying, we will just give the other offense a touchdown. Like, if the tush push is this good. Amazing.
I really wish the Commanders had done it again just to have Hockey get on and say, that's it. That's enough. I told you not to do it again. You do it. You did it again. I am hereby renouncing my kingdom of Namunda, and I am giving the touchdown to the Eagles. That would have been epic. I mean, how do you even like for prop bets for everything? Like, what are the odds on referee? I'm looking here for the touchdown. Referee awards touchdown to team would be incredible.
It's like earlier this year when Jared Goff had a touchdown, but he didn't catch it based on, no, maybe that was Josh Allen who had a touchdown, but he didn't catch it since it was a lateral.
Yeah,
so,
I did that game.
Yeah, so it
counted as a passing touchdown and a receiving touchdown.
So he had 0 catches but a receiving touchdown. That's what that rule would have been similar to. Also, like when you separated your kids when they were younger, like one has to go to timeout because Frankie Louvu's jumping over the line early, which, by the way, was not his fault. I don't blame him because how else can you stop the play outside of timing it correctly? The Eagles just happened to see through that.
That's a really smart way to do it. I mean, I think it's worth a shot.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely worth a shot. All right, you already talked about it. The receptions, A.J. Brown's 5.5, Goddard 4.5, Devontae Smith 4.5, Saquon 2.5. Is this still one where you like Goddard the most?
Goddard, yeah, well, the receiving yards, I like Goddard, but for the receptions, because A.J. Brown is still getting the volume in all of these games, hasn't dipped below a 20% target share now in the postseason at any point, just hoarding the team's targets. I still like the A.J. Brown over receptions. The only thing is when we talk about receiving yards, it is tougher. That's how we got there a couple weeks ago in the divisional round whenever I mentioned betting under Nico Collins, just because of how the Chiefs limit opposing wide receiver ones. And luckily Nico got there by a half a yard. 81 he came in at when his over-under was 81.5. It's very scary, though, to bet unders on man among boys like A.J. Brown. And so I am a bit tepid to bet the under on his receiving prop. For the receptions, I think his volume is enough to where I would lean that way, the over for him.
Love it. Did I miss anything as it relates to the Eagles, John?
I told you my 4 favorite, but just to, or my 3 favorite, but just to rattle them off quickly, yes. Goddard over 51.5 receiving yards. Hurts rushing over 37.5. Hurts first touchdown plus 650. Dallas Goedert anytime touchdown plus 295. And then I could not find it on DraftKings Sportsbook. I don't think they have it out yet. But just because of what I mentioned with the Chiefs now struggling to contain running backs, especially for explosive runs, as both Mixon and Cook got there the past couple of games with quite a few carries that went for 10 plus yards. I'm waiting for DraftKings to release a Saquon Barkley longest run prop. It's probably going to come in quite high, maybe even in the 20s. But if we do get a number that suggests it's a little bit lower, then I do want to bet over his longest run. For obvious reasons, because as we've seen, he's a walking explosive play.
It's crazy. Love it. Great work. Next week, we'll do the Chiefs. I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.